We're just going to allow the attendees to come in. We have David here on the line. Welcome, David. George. All right, guys, good afternoon, everybody. And I just want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Tyler Winnett. I'm the IRA Business Development Manager here at Eckerd Enterprises. In this live webinar, we're going to talk about how an investor can build value inside their retirement account through the ownership of mineral rights. We have Brittany, who will be discussing how the self-directed IRA is perfect investment vehicle to achieve this. Brittany is the Director of Marketing and Sales at Next Generation Trust Company. She has an extensive experience in direct sales and marketing and customer relationship management. In her role, she develops and oversees the implementation of Next Generation's marketing strategy across all media platforms. And Troy is the CEO and manager of Eckerd Enterprises, and he has been in the oil and gas industry for over 35 years. Troy will be talking about how investing in mineral rights looks like and how that can be done inside your self-directed IRA. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
And so through the webinar, if you guys have any questions or anything, just put them in the Q&A box with the Zoom, and we'll come back to that at the end of our presentation with Troy. And so first, we're going to have Brittany up and showing her PowerPoint slide and her presentation. I'll kick it over to you, Brittany.
All right. Thanks. Let me just share my screen. Okay, we should be good to go. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be talking to you today about self-directed IRAs and specifically mineral rights ownership. I hope, first, let me just say, I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy out there. Crazy times we're in, but if you're on the webinar, you're obviously taking advantage of wherever you are and the time that you have to learn a little bit about, I think, investing, obviously, in a specific area, but also educating yourself today on some aspects of financial planning and retirement planning, which is really important. And we've seen, obviously, a lot of activity in the market over the past couple months. So I think being aware of different tools and strategies that you could take advantage of to hedge against some volatility and do some different things depending on what's going on is really important. So kudos to you for that. So today I'm going to talk to you about self-directed IRAs conceptually, and then I'm going to tie it into mineral rights investing a bit, and then obviously we'll have Troy go into more detail on that. But what I really want you guys to grasp is how are these different from other IRAs that you might have or be familiar with, and what are the benefits of doing this, and really how can you gain some long-term benefits from looking into this type of strategy. So why is Next Generation talking to you about self-directed IRAs? So our role as it relates to this strategy is to be a custodian and administrator for these types of accounts. So we are a financial services company, but we're not a bank or a brokerage house, and we're not financial advisors. But what we focus on is allowing investors to establish the types of retirement accounts that are going to let them invest in some of these types of interesting and what we call non-traditional investments. So we allow these types of accounts to be held. We also do all of the tax reporting and the record keeping and documentation on these types of accounts. And of course, like we're doing today, we provide tons of education. The bottom is just of here is just a snapshot of our website's homepage, but you can go there later and peruse around. There's a lot of educational information. And obviously with the accounts that we would hold for investors like yourself, we would also provide administration to process all the transactions that are associated with these investments. So we're sort of kind of guiding investors through the process of setting up something that might be new and different to them, and making sure that every step of the way they're educated on what they're doing, and they're comfortable with what they're doing. So just a quick disclaimer, as I mentioned, we're not financial advisors. So while we can hold all sorts of interesting and unique investments, we're not selling specific investments. We're educating on the different options, and then you as the investor have the responsibility to make a choice as to what you'd like to invest in with these types of accounts. So we're not endorsing or specifically recommending specific products or companies, but we have actually done a webinar with Troy and Eckerd in the past, so we're happy to come back and do another one again today and kind of refresh you guys on this. So just a quick background on the company for reference. We've been in business for about 15 years. We are a women-owned business located in New Jersey, and our founder and CEO is still running the shop. She actually came to found the company through her real estate background. So she's a broker, a licensed broker, and had a number of rental properties, and she wanted to put some of these investments into a retirement account. And in the course of figuring out how to do that, she came to find self-directed IRA was something that could hold that. And then when she discovered that, she became very passionate about spreading that education to other people, because even now, and especially then at the time, a lot of people didn't know that this was an option. It's not heavily marketed the way that it is by banks and brokerage houses, because they don't typically play in this space, right? So they're typically restricted to stocks and bonds or products that are approved to be traded on the open market. So it's a bit of a niche, and she found it, and she was very passionate, so she founded her own company. So since then, we've been involved in a lot of publications. We've published thought leadership material in Forbes, which we're a member. And as you can see, she's been recognized for her entrepreneurship, but we've obviously provided education through a variety of different mediums, podcasts, webinars like today, different regional conferences throughout the country as well. So how to define a self-directed IRA, because the term can be used kind of loosely. But for the purposes of today's discussion, a self-directed IRA is essentially one that's going to allow you to invest in non-publicly traded alternative assets. So typically with the retirement accounts that are most popular, I should say, or most common, that you might have, with example, a Fidelity or a Schwab, you're typically restricted to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So those are things that are publicly traded. With self-directed IRAs, if you think about things that are not, if you think about private investments like real estate, like hedge funds, like private equity and partnerships, we're going to talk more about that in a moment. But when you think about those types of things, you wouldn't typically think you'd be able to do through a retirement account. You can. And that's what the self-directed IRA is going to allow you to do. And you can see it's been around for a while. And then obviously, aside from opening up your options, another one of the benefits is clearly going to be the tax advantages that come from doing this through a retirement account. So if you were to use your personal funds for one of these investments, and then you were to earn on those investments, you're clearly going to be responsible for tax on the earnings in the year that you recognize them. So by funneling this through a retirement account, what you're doing is you're either going to defer the taxes that you would have owed on the returns, or if you have a Roth IRA, all your earnings are going to grow tax-free. So that's a huge benefit from a financial perspective. Another thing that it can do is, and it applies to our current situation for sure, is hedge against volatility in the market. Because most people think if you're invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, that you have a diversified portfolio. But what we're talking about today is taking that one step further and diversifying beyond publicly traded assets into alternative assets like real estate. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you even more stability over time, because alternative assets tend to be non-correlated with the stock market. So that's to say, if a particular stock is up and down, and you have alternatives in your portfolio, they're not going to tend to mirror that fluctuation. They're going to be tend to be more stable over time. So that's going to help kind of balance out some of the activity that's affecting you in the public markets. And then obviously, if you're passionate about these types of investments, or you have personal experience doing these types of investments, and hey, I'm going to get double-digit returns on my investment, or whatever it might be, and you have a little bit more control over choosing what you're going to do, and that could drive a higher return on investment than maybe the market might yield you. Yet again, another benefit, right? So it's putting more control in your hands to identify the investments you think are going to be best for you, and then allow you to have a little bit more control over the return, and then obviously give you the tax benefit. So just real quick, why this is becoming more, I think it's becoming more widely known and more important than it used to be, is that we're seeing the retirement landscape change, right? So I think everybody knows traditionally, if you retired back in the day, you collect Social Security, maybe you had a pension, you're good. Today, Social Security is thin, and we anticipate there'll be less of that available for future generations. And we also don't see pensions as common. Really, it's the 401k now that's commonly offered. And unfortunately, when you're working for a company, you get the benefits of maybe them contributing or matching your contributions to your 401k, but when you leave, that's it, right? You don't get any more out of that. It's not being actively managed, so you have to do something with it in order to keep actively managing it and growing it. So usually what people will do is they'll take the old 401k, roll it into an IRA, but that means it's on you now to decide how you're going to manage the investments in that account once it's in an IRA. So what this is basically saying is that it's putting the onus on us as individuals to manage our retirement planning more actively and be more aware of what is the gap between where we need to be and where we are. And how do we close that gap? And how do we think more outside the box about ways to do that? And as you can see, the percentage of workers over retirement age has increased. Percentage of individuals over retirement age that are still working has increased. So for the first time in a while, it's cracked 20%, and that's 1 in 5 Americans, basically age 65 and older, are still working. So when you think about why, there might be a number of reasons, but I'm pretty sure one of the reasons is because they don't have enough money to retire and live the lifestyle that they want. So not necessarily what they'd like to be doing, but the situation they're in. So this is why we need to start thinking about different ways to do things. So when we look at self-directed retirement accounts, there are a number of different account types that you can actually choose if you're going to do a self-directed IRA. So the most common are the traditional IRA, which is basically tax deferred. All your funds go in pre-tax, and then your earnings grow tax deferred, and then you pay the taxes when you take the withdrawals later. The Roth is sort of the reverse of that, where your funds go in after tax. So you basically already paid taxes on the funds that are going to be in there, and then anything that you earn in a Roth grows tax-free. All your withdrawals, as long as they're qualified withdrawals, will be tax-free. If you're a business owner, the SEP, Simple, and then other employer plans are available for you, and those will allow you to contribute more money out of pocket into your plan. So if you're making good money in your business and you want to take a portion of that and set it aside for yourself, and or some employees to put into a retirement account, and then maybe self-direct that into alternatives, you can do that as well. And then some of the other ones to think about, which a lot of people don't realize can be self-directed, are education savings accounts for children's education. So those can be opened for a minor child. As soon as they're born, you can establish one and start saving for them, and then withdraw those funds tax-free for education expenses. And then HSAs, we all know, are used for medical expenses, so you can self-direct them as well. And those withdrawals for medical reasons are going to be tax-free as well. So getting funds into the account, there are several options. As I just alluded to a moment ago, you can make a contribution out of pocket, which means that you're basically taking your personal funds and then you're depositing them into an IRA or retirement account. Now, the IRS is going to tell you every year how much you can contribute. There's a max that they set, or they call it a contribution limit every year, depending on the account type that you have. So I won't go into that now, but that's just something to keep in mind. But you do have the ability to make contributions out of your own pocket. If you have an IRA elsewhere, like a Fidelity or Schwab, you can transfer some or all of the funds to a self-directed IRA, and then you can use that cash to make these alternative investments. As I also mentioned earlier, if you have an employer plan that's not an IRA now, but you'd like to put it into one, like an old 401k or maybe a 403b, a 457, any sort of employer-sponsored plan. Most often, if you're no longer employed with them, you're able to take that money and roll it into an IRA. And of course, you could roll it into a self-directed IRA and use that to invest as well. And then, of course, moving funds from any sort of tax deferred account, like for example, a traditional IRA, if you're going to take funds out of that and move it into a Roth, which is going to grow tax-free, when you do that movement, you're going to be paying tax on the amount you're moving into the Roth up front. So that's called a conversion, and that can also be done. It's just a matter of understanding the tax implications. But as you can see, there are several options for getting funds into a self-directed IRA. So then what can you invest in? This is determined by the IRS, just like with anything else related to retirement accounts. And they basically say anything that's privately held except life insurance and collectibles. So that leaves us a slew of options, the most popular being real estate. And even within that category, like we could categorize mineral rights into real estate for the purposes of today, I would think, because essentially if you're purchasing a portion of land that's going to be used for those purposes, then it's similar to a real estate investment. Anything like, as well as that, anything like fixing and flipping a property, purchasing a rental property in your IRA and collecting rent in your IRA over time, investing in private companies or startups, forming partnerships with other individuals. I did mention hedge funds before. They could be domestic or offshore. Private stock as well. It could be pre-IPO, or it could just be stock in a private company. Precious metals, private lending. There's just, I could probably do a whole hour discussion on this, but just to give you an idea, there are a lot of things that you can do that, going back to our initial conversation, are not going to be available to you with a regular brokerage account. So just to clarify the logistics of an investment, once you choose your investment, you work with your custodian, like a Next Generation, for example, to take the funds out of your IRA and send them to the investment. And you're going to direct the custodian to do that for you on behalf of your IRA. And then once your investment yields a return, that return is going to be paid back to your IRA directly. So you're not personally holding anything. You're not taking anything in your name, because that would create a taxable event, right? So you want to make sure that everything's flowing out of the IRA and then back into it. And the conduit between those two things, those two entities, is going to be your self-directed IRA custodian to help you with that and make sure that everything is properly documented. So this is all great. The IRS does have some rules and restrictions on what you can and cannot do with your IRA if you're going to be investing in alternatives, and they have what they call prohibited transactions. There are 3 types. The first one is basically saying that if your IRA is going to make an investment, it can't do a transaction with a disqualified person. So they have defined a list of what they call disqualified persons. I'm going to show that real quick. That would be yourself personally, so you can't directly do investment transactions with your own IRA, or your spouse, your ascendants, descendants, or their spouses. So if you think about your family tree in like a lineal direction, any of those relationships are considered disqualified persons from the IRA that you have. There are some exceptions if they're not lineal. For example, siblings you can invest with using your IRA, cousins, aunts and uncles, right, because they're not lineal. But most family members, you're going to stay away from doing direct transactions with them. Also off limits are anyone that's advising you on the account or your investments within the account, which would be like a financial planner or advisor, an accountant that is doing, work on the account for you. And then any companies that are owned by, majority owned by combination of the disqualified people. So sometimes people say, well, okay, you said I can't invest with my parents, but they own an LLC. Can I invest with the LLC? Well, if the owner of the LLC is your parents and they own more than 50%, then it's still considered a disqualified entity and cannot invest directly with your IRA. So these are just some of the things to think about if you are looking to do specific investment. With something like mineral rights, what we're going to talk about today, that's really usually not going to be a problem because most likely you don't have that kind of relationship with the company that you're going to be investing with, right? It's more of a hands-off, like a passive, non-related investment with them. So that's not really going to be a problem. But when it gets into individual relationships, then you want to be sure that you understand the rules and talk to your custodian. The second prohibited transaction type is an extension of credit. It's basically lending between the IRA and any disqualified person. So the same rules can apply, just no lending back and forth. And then self-dealing is going to be maybe not as black and white as what we just talked about, but situation where the IRA is making an investment, but somebody else is benefiting, and a disqualified person benefiting. So an example of that might be you use your IRA to invest in a private company. However, you're personally providing consulting services to that company and you're getting paid a salary for that. Well, now you're basically double benefiting. Your IRA is invested into the company, and maybe as a result of that investment, the company's making more money and you're getting paid for consulting them. So that's sort of like a double dip situation that you would want to stay away from, or at least think twice about and talk to your custodian, because there can be a lot of gray area in that space, and it's best to definitely speak with a professional before pulling the trigger on any investments like that. So specific restrictions as it might relate to like purchasing mineral rights or land associated with it, or these types of real estate investments would be, of course, as we just mentioned, it really should be for investment purposes only, not for personal gain. You don't want to alter any products that are owned by your IRA. So if you purchase a piece of land, you're not physically going to touch it or alter it. Someone else is going to be doing that, right? Contributions are cash only, so you can't provide services or materials to the IRA as contributions, or do any sweat equity on the property or the land that your IRA owns. So again, you want to be hands off. And then none of those disqualified people we talked about can live on that space, rent that space, use that space, get any benefit from that space. It really should be for the benefit of your IRA. And then, as you can see here, no buying from, selling to, and lending. Again, this is sort of a reiteration of the other restrictions that we talked about, but I just wanted to go over some more examples to kind of put a framework around that for you. So as far as the process for setting up a self-directed IRA, a lot of people ask, what's the first step? How do I start? How do I logistically get this thing going? And then how long does it take, right? So the first step is getting an account open by filling out an application. So you're going to have to, even if you have an IRA somewhere else, you have to open a self-directed IRA as a separate account, and you would fill out an application to do that. Our turnaround time for that's 1 to 2 business days, so it's fairly quick. And then the second step in the process becomes how are you going to fund your account? So we talked about you can make a contribution, you can transfer from another IRA, you can roll over from another employer plan. So depending on what you're doing and how quickly that institution can release your funds, I have 1 to 6 weeks. It really doesn't take 6 weeks, but it's a conservative estimate because what we don't want is somebody coming to us saying, I want to set up an IRA and I want to do this investment and I have to have it ready in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that's probably not a realistic timeline to make the investment happen. So what I'm trying to show here is that there are some variables in the process and we don't have control over 100% of them. And especially the funding piece, because it's going to rely on another company to let go of your money and move it over. And no one's ever excited to do that. But I would say that we've seen it take as little as a few days, especially with transfers. And usually I would say 1 to 2 weeks is like the turnaround time for that. But if there are issues or delays with the transfer, it could extend out longer than that. So you just want to keep that in mind. And then of course, when you're making an investment, you do want to give it a week or two as well, because what we're going to need is for you to choose what you want to invest in, explain to us what you're doing, and then we're going to need paperwork filled out by you to authorize us to make the investment. And then we're also going to need to review supporting documentation that shows us what you're actually investing in and what are the terms that you're agreeing to. So for example, if a contract has to be signed, it should be in the name of your IRA. You should review it and agree to the terms of that as the owner of the account. And then we also want to look to see if everything's labeled appropriately. Are there any prohibited transactions that we're noticing? And we're going to do that sort of, we call it an administrative or a compliance review. And that's going to take us somewhere between 2 and 5 business days to do an in-depth review of that. If there's anything that we see as a red flag or needs to be adjusted or changed, we're going to let you know. So you may need to make some revisions before it's ready to go. And then we can go ahead and process the transaction. So I usually tell people from end to end on this, just to conservatively say about 4 to 6 weeks to get everything set up, funded, investment reviewed, and ready to go. So even if you're thinking that this is a strategy you want to employ, you can always open an account and then you can fund it when you get closer to making an investment. So you don't have to do all these things one right after the other immediately. You can, if you want to be proactive, you can start having the conversation now, start looking at investments, and then when you have one identified, make sure that you've kind of already started through the process to get things set up. So an example of the documents I mentioned that we would need would be internal documents that we would have you fill out and sign to let us know. The buy direction letter is basically going to tell us what are you buying, for how much, who are you investing with, is there a contact there that we should know about that we can speak to with questions, how do you want the funds to be sent over, and then how do you want to pay for the transaction, and then supporting documents. I believe for Eckerd, there is a contract of purchase or sale documents or purchase acknowledgement. So you would need to sign those things. And then of course, whatever property you're going to be owning or portion of property has to be titled to your self-directed IRA. So those are the things that we would need to review, you would need to approve, we would need to sign on behalf of your IRA. So in closing, hopefully I didn't take too much time. I took a little more than I was hoping to. So in closing, this is a strategy that can help you strengthen relationships with other investors. Obviously, the main idea here is protecting your financial future and growing and accelerating, hopefully, your investment returns, right? And investing in things that you know and understand, that you feel comfortable with, getting that diversification. And ultimately, you want to be at a place where you can retire comfortably and have a better financial future for yourself. So I hope that this was helpful in explaining that. In a short period of time, we covered a lot. So of course, and I'm sure our contact information will be available after this, but if you do have any questions or you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion, if you have a question we don't get to today, visit the website. You can send my team an email. We're all on there, including myself. You can call the office, but we're in New Jersey, so right now it's a little tough. We're not all there in the office physically every day, so your best bet would be to shoot an email and then somebody can schedule a call with you. So with that, thanks for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Tyler and Troy.
Hey, thank you, Brittany. Really appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and send this over to Troy so we can get started.
Let me see if I can get this loaded up here real quick. Brittany, thank you for doing a great job. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Let me see if I can get this on real quick. My apologies. You know, the one thing about this COVID-19 is it's forcing us all to become more literate when it comes to digital and online and the whole nine yards. And every time I think I have it down to a perfect science, it turns out that I'm just a rookie. So I think I got it. Is the screen up okay, Tyler?
You're good.
All right, sounds good. Well, first off, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's an exciting time in the oil and gas industry, and I know that's polar opposite what you've been hearing in the media, but it always depends on which side of the road you're standing on when somebody talks about there's a car crash. And effectively, the oil and gas industry across the globe has effectively been in a severe car crash. It has been unprecedented times with regard to what's going on around the globe in terms of low demand, high supply, catastrophic prices have dropped in the price of crude oil and natural gas. And many of you are wondering, you know, why am I on a webinar today learning about oil and gas mineral rights? And in fact, I'm very interested to see why somebody would tell me that oil and gas minerals are a place that I should put my money or consider investing, whether it be in a direct investment account or through a self-directed IRA. What I'd like to do is take about 15 minutes of your time, and I'd like to bring you up to speed on what's going on in the market and why I believe that mineral rights are a perfect investment for a self-directed IRA for various reasons. I'll just start off with a recap of my expertise. I've been in the business of oil and gas investing since 1985. I'm 55 years old. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been married 35 years. I've got 4 older kids, 5 grandkids. I seem to have been a generation ahead of my time. I'm very old by activity and experience, but I'm only 55 years old as far as in physical age. I point that out because when I look at investing, I'm always looking for the reason why any particular source of information is more qualified than another. And I find it quite interesting to listen to webinars and presentations about real estate and stocks and cryptocurrency and gold. And I find that many of the sources that are giving me that information are probably not even as old as some of the shoes I have in my closet. So it's not that I discount younger or youthful input, but there's nothing that ever replaces experience, and that experience comes with good times and bad. So I'm going to get right started on the presentation, explain to you why this old codger believes mineral rights are perfect for your self-directed IRA. And I will tell you this, I've had a self-directed IRA myself since the early 1990s. I was fortunately exposed to the tool of self-directed IRAs very early on. I don't remember exactly what year I started, but as soon as I figured out I could direct my own retirement account, that I could build wealth that was going to be tax deferred and allow growth of those assets that weren't going to be taxed until I withdrew my money, I was very, very interested in doing that because I've seen tax rates go very high to modest over the last 35 years. And I know the biggest deteriorating factor of anybody's net worth and portfolio is the erosion due to taxes. So this is a great tool that Brittany's talking about with self-directed IRAs. And I encourage most, if not all of you who have money in qualified plans to consider using self-directed IRAs and controlling your own future. So let's talk about it. So first off, it's very important everyone understands that really mineral rights are effectively no different than real estate. It is a real estate asset. It is deeded, it's titled, it's described, it has all the characteristics, it's classified like real estate, and I'm going to tell you how that works. When the land grant days were established, you were given a parcel of land for wherever you put your stake in the ground. And over time, it's been determined that that particular transfer of real estate to you as the actual deeded owner, there was actually 3 rights that were granted that you were even probably unaware of 200 years ago. You were given air rights, everything that's not connected to the surface, but it's directly above your property. The surface rights, everything that is on the surface are directly connected to your surface rights. And then you have mineral rights, everything below the surface. And so over time, there has been an evolution of value in each one of those rights, and most owners are probably not even aware of it, but if they are, they probably don't know how to really monetize it or treat it. That's where the expertise of companies like mine play out, and that's why you're on this webinar today to hear how they might be an advantage as far as an investment or asset for you, your family, in a self-directed IRA. So owning real estate property without real property liabilities. Now, what's that mean in simple terms? It means the following. Whenever I own surface real estate, I've got property tax, I have maintenance, I have insurance, I have tenants, I have repairs, I have capital cost. I have all the things necessary and typically associated with maintaining the value or the integrity of that real estate. In the case of mineral rights, depending upon how you approach it, which is the way most people do, is you own 100% of the natural resources below the surface when you own the minerals. Water, metals, oil, gas, they're your rights. You simply are going to allow, through a lease document, somebody else to develop and extract those natural resources while you sit back like the Queen of England or the King of England, and you sit back and collect a royalty payment, cash flow, not with any expenses, not with any future liability or capital costs. You sit back and receive a royalty check every single month for the value of whatever natural resources are extracted from underneath your minerals. It's a great, great investment. I like investments where I take zero risk, I get nothing but cash flow, and I have no future liability. It's my favorite kind of investment. Now, let me tell you what's happened. I noticed on Brittany's screen, which I have on many of these self-directed IRA presentations, that mineral rights are not labeled as a distinctive particular asset. Why? Well, in the last 100 years, as oil and gas in this country has played out, mineral rights have always been available. But mineral rights typically have the same kind of level of risk as even exploration. If I own minerals under a 640-acre tract of land and a vertical well was drilled, if the vertical well resulted in a dry hole or a non-commercial well, most likely my mineral rights will either become very overvalued, meaning they're going to be discounted because the well's not successful or was a dry hole, or they could be completely eliminated as far as value because no one wants to come drill and offset a dry hole. Well, in about 20 years ago, this country realized we were sitting on an ocean of oil and gas, and that ocean of oil and gas was trapped in a very hard rock, buried anywhere from 1 mile to 3 miles below the surface. And they were in what we call in the oil and gas industry a basin, B-A-S-I-N, a basin. Everything you see on the map on your screen that's in pink or light pink are the new oil and gas shale basins that have been discovered commercially viable over the last 20 years. It's not like we didn't know they were there. It's not like the seismic didn't show they were there. We knew they were saturated with oil and gas. We simply couldn't figure out how to get those oil and gas molecules to flow to the surface in commercial, financially viable quantities. That solution was figured out about 20 years ago, and it all comes as a result of technology. The oil and gas industry is the #1 consumer of software and hardware. So as we're now sending spacecraft to Mars, as we're now waiting patiently for a 1/10 of a second to get a photograph sent by our iPhone from one country to another, the oil and gas industry has accelerated its success as a result of technology. So we went from a country that was running out of oil and gas in 2008, and now we're a country that is the #1 crude oil producer in the world in less than 11 years. You don't do that without massive success and, of course, without having great technology. So now the question becomes, okay, we have all these beautiful basins that have been developed. We're sitting on an ocean of oil and gas. Why are mineral rights available? How do I invest in mineral rights? And why do I want to put them in my self-directed IRA? So let's go to it. So essentially, a basin looks like a buried Grand Canyon. These are erosional events, tectonic events that over time were filled with organic material, dead plants and animals as the tributaries and water sources moved through these canyons. And then over time, these canyons were filled up due to volcanic eruptions and the various changes in the weather and the topographical changes. When you look at the canyon wall in this photograph, each one of those layers represents a compaction of dead plants and animals. So what we discovered as an industry is not only these basins massive in size, not only are they easy to find, they also are loaded in layer upon layer of oil and gas, hydrocarbon material that is sitting there, been waiting for us to simply figure out a smart way to extract it. Well, if you happen to be the mineral owner or the person who owned the surface across this Grand Canyon, you also would probably own the mineral rights below the surface that has all this oil and gas trapped in it. Realistically, in the land grant days, we were given the right to grab our horse and a stick. We ran out to find our 1 square mile. We stuck our stake in the ground and said, this is home. And we got all the rights, both air, surface, and mineral. Well, we have no idea at that time, or no one had an idea at that time, that there would be cell towers, windmills, and oil and gas extraction capacity. And so we had no idea the value we were sitting on. Through this technology and through what's happened in the last 11 years, we've gone from about 8.9 million people in the United States that get royalty checks every single month from wells to now there's probably close to 25 to 30 million individuals who own mineral rights that will be getting royalty checks from the thousands upon thousands of successful wells that were drilled and produced over the last decade. That number is small in comparison to where we're headed over the next 50 years. We now have tens of millions of acres across this country that are loaded with oil and gas, and now it has become an open market for sophisticated investors who are willing to look at investing in mineral rights. What we want to do is give you the reasons why mineral rights make sense to put in your portfolio. First off, let's just do a quick description on the technology advancements. So at the top of your screen, you'll see there's a little oil derrick symbol. You'll see there's a yellow layer, which is the oil and gas reservoir, and a squiggly black line trying to work its way through that yellow reservoir. The fact of the matter is that line represents a horizontal wellbore path, and this particular well was drilled in 2012. The well generated about $4.7 million worth of revenue using today's prices, and it did it in 87 months. It's not a bad well, it's not a home run, but it's a commercial well generating positive cash flow. The mineral owners are receiving revenue and have been for 87 months. The oil company who drilled it, the same thing. Now let's take a look at what happened to technology. So in technology, in the bottom part of the screen, you have a well drilled in 2019. Now all of a sudden you see that the horizontal displacement, the black line going through the yellow section reservoir in the bottom of your screen, stays within that formation 95+% of the time. It's guided by GPS with triangulation. In other words, the same tools to send spacecraft to Mars are being used to guide drill bits in the ground 2 miles below the surface. Well, now that well, in the example that I have on this page, in 5 months produced 5.3 million barrels of oil of value, $5.3 million in value, and it did in 5 months. So you can see just mathematically, you want 87 months to make 4.7 million, or you want 5 months to make 5.3 million. That is what made the United States the #1 producer of oil and gas in the country. But most importantly is every single part of that yellow reservoir, whether it be the top or the bottom section, are owned by mineral owners. We own 100% of the oil and gas and natural resources below the ground. We simply have leased our rights to an oil company who will take 100% of the financial responsibility and be responsible for extracting and producing all the oil and gas. So for us as mineral owners, we want as many wells drilled by the best oil companies, and we want every drop of oil and gas produced and taken out of the ground, and we want to get paid every single month. It is a great net cash flow investment opportunity. Okay, how do I compare this to real estate? Well, let me just tell you this. The first thing you must get your head around is mineral rights are in fact real property. It is real estate. When we take ownership to minerals, we are actually severing the surface rights from the mineral rights. The guy that owns the 1,000-acre ranch, he still owns his cattle, his ponds, his ranch, but he has sold part of his mineral rights or all of his mineral rights that are now severed in a separate title recorded in the courthouse. Like an income-producing building that's stacked, let's say a condo and apartment complex, there are layers upon layers of successful income-generating potential. And the oil well that's drilled is simply going to go down and one layer at a time, multiple wells at a time, extract the oil and gas from our minerals. And at the end of the month, the oil company is going to say, okay, we received our money for the oil sold, the gas sold. Let's take that 15 to 25% right off the top before expenses are paid. And that's going to go to our mineral owners who have graciously leased us the minerals that we now are making oil and gas production from. Okay, a simple chart tells you this. The following thing is, the answer is no, 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 no when it comes to mineral rights. We don't pay property taxes. We don't pay repairs and maintenance. We're not worrying about utilities. We literally are sitting at the top of the food chain, and we're letting the oil company go out and spend all their money and take all the risk, both financially and as far as environmental. Traditional real estate. I got property tax. Even if my apartment complex is empty, I owe property tax. I have expenses, landscape, maintenance, property management. I have all these expenses in traditional real estate, which are not inherent with mineral rights. So there is a lot of investors today, as they build up for their retirement, looking at self-directed IRAs and saying, what a great asset to put inside my self-directed IRA. I want to create growth and create asset improvement. I don't want to have any deterioration of my portfolio, so I don't want any cost, expenses, or anything that might diminish the value inside my self-directed IRA. So let's just give you an example of what can happen inside your IRA. Brittany did a great job explaining two things that I think most of us don't take into account. Putting money into an IRA is the smartest investment you can make. Putting money in a self-directed IRA using some of your already deposited IRA funds or new funds you're contributing is really smart. You take money and put it in an IRA or a self-directed IRA as a particular investment vehicle. You're now giving yourself the chance to grow that asset as far as value, and whatever income, if it generates income, will maintain itself in that IRA without having to pay tax at that time. So what do I want to do? I want to find the highest income generating asset to put in that IRA, and one that I know is going to go up, not down in value. So that way I get growth plus cash flow, and all of that generating inside an IRA. It's not subject to taxes, so it's tax deferred. So in an oil and gas mineral right, in today's environment, it looks like an underground plumbing job. You have horizontal wells being drilled 4, 5, 12 wells at a time in one direction. The same thing happens going in the opposite direction. It leaves a minuscule footprint on the surface because it's all being done underground. So it is a very environmental friendly, it is a very economically sensitive type of operation. The best part is we're sitting up in the throne as the royalty owner, watching everybody else do all the hard work and then sending us 15 to 25% of the revenue every month without being subject to expenses, capital costs, or any type of liability. So when we think about calling an oil and gas project or oil and gas mineral rights, I like to refer to it as horsepower, because just like the big horse in the screen in the upper left pulling that buggy, that's one big horse pulling one small buggy. It does a great job generating energy and movement and kinetic value. The same thing happens to a pump jack. The head of a pump jack is called a horse's head. That's why I'm using horsepower as my analogy. What you'll see is that if you have one good horse pulling one wagon, that's great. I got income, I have energy, and I'm moving in the right direction. But what I'd like to see is something like this. I'd like to see minerals that I own where I've got multiple wells being drilled. This is an actual photograph out of Oklahoma where these oil companies set up pad sites. They move straight along the highway. They'll take one drilling rig. They'll sit there for 3, 4, 5 months at a time, and they'll go in and develop the value of the mineral owners in this area. And what they'll say is, thank you for leasing us your minerals. Thank you for allowing us to develop your minerals free. We're going to go spend $15 million per well to drill it. We plan on drilling 8, 10, 12 wells at a time. That simply means that each one of these wells is drilling literally $50 to $100 million worth of wells over a 90 to 120 day period. You and I own that nice green pasture out there, and all we want to do is see a green check or an envelope every month with my share of royalty in that account. What I really want to do as a mineral is I want maximum drainage. I want to see a second confirmation well drill that tells the oil company, hey, Mr. Tenant, Mr. Exxon, Mr. Marathon, thank you so much for leasing. Congratulations on the second well. Now I have 2 income sources, like owning a duplex. Really what we want to do is we want to be the Budweiser Clydesdales. We want to see 8, 10, 12 wells on our property. And because these shale formations that these minerals are located in, we know that there's a very high likelihood we end up with 4, 8, 24 wells on our property. Again, this is a new market. Minerals have not been available really in any commercial viable quantity to private investors but the last few years. So now that it's open, we're educating investors why minerals are available. We're telling you that what they do for you and benefit. And now, along with Brittany's help and Next Generation, we're telling you some of the best ways in order to invest in minerals, which of course is a self-directed IRA. Now, a physical picture, and again, I'm being very conscious of the time, so I'm talking a little fast. I'm normally fast anyway, plus with caffeine. But what we're basically showing you is a picture. The picture is as follows. There is a 2-mile horizontal well section that's being drilled to the north. The same thing's happening to the south. The inset picture shows you how the plumbing looks underground. The actual photograph in the yellow box shows you the pad site in which the drilling is taking place. There's over 6 wells in that pad site. And they've drilled 13 wells going north and south from this little 5-acre pad site. Everything else stays the same, the beautiful green pastures, the trees, the waters, the tributary, and they're able to drill 13 wells from this one centralized location. What's most important, though, as a mineral owner, is everybody that owns minerals inside that yellow box on the left-hand side where you see the dotted lines, we all will get our pro rata share of every penny of every dollar of value that we pulled out of the ground in terms of oil quantity and gas quantity for as long as these wells last. In the shale basins, typically it's a 25 to 50 plus year life expectancy of commercial extraction of oil and gas. So minerals are valuable in that they create cash flow. They're valuable in that they have multiple revenue sources for each well that's drilled. And they're very valuable in that they have a long life of commercial or economic viability, which means we get a long period of time receiving checks on a monthly basis. We like that. All right, let's just give you a recap. The recap is that mineral rights do not come with any expenses. We pay zero. We let the oil companies or whoever leases from us, they pay all the expense. We have zero liability, zero capital costs, zero holding costs, zero environmental issues, and we have zero exposure. In other words, once we sign a lease with the oil company, we do so with a caveat that it's all your responsibility and all your risk. We just want to know when you're going to send us our first check after that well's put online. Royalty revenues are paid out monthly, and they start about 6 months after you own a mineral interest if you're buying producing minerals. Okay, it may take longer if you're buying minerals that are going to be drilled in 12 or 24, 36 months. There are various categories of minerals, by the way. Many states, like the state that our company focuses on, Oklahoma, there is no property tax. So there's virtually no holding cost, whether a well is producing or not. We pay zero in holding cost. Royalty distributions are paid from gross proceeds, meaning when Exxon or Marathon picks up a check at the end of the month for the oil and gas sold, the first thing they set aside, because it's not their money, is the royalty revenue, and that money is set aside to be distributed to royalty owners that own those minerals, because we're never subject to any of the expenses of the well. The only thing we pay is to the state that we're producing or having our minerals owned in. We owe a severance tax for the oil and gas that's pulled out of the ground, and that severance tax is to allow the state to recover for natural resources that are being utilized. Okay, targeted economic expectations. So we have two sides. We have what I personally, for Eckerd, look as personal targets, and then we have what drives the economics of minerals. So let's just be very candid. I'm not going to read each one, but I think you're capable of reading. Commodity prices are obvious. You know, if oil's down, my royalty check's small. If oil and gas prices are high, my royalty check goes up higher. It's very important for commodity price because it drives the oil company's economic reasoning for drilling wells. The volume. I'd rather find 1,000 barrel a day well than a 1 barrel a day well. So the volume of output directly correlates with the rate of return and the expedited value that I get in the cash flow generated. The number of wells drilled, the recovery reserves, supply and demand, it's all your basic economic factors. But at the end of the day, those particular drivers help determine the success of your mineral ownership. My personal targets for my minerals that I buy, for minerals we buy on behalf of investors, is we're looking for only minerals that can generate a 10% rate of return. We would like to make an economic value growth of our mineral ownership of 2 to 5 times what we invest over a 5 to 7 year period, because we do look to liquidate minerals in order to create maximum return and value for our own account. Cash flow, we'd like to see cash coming off our minerals in 120 days. We're very specific what we buy. If you decide to invest in minerals in whatever format, you always want to know that you're going to create some cash flow, because that is the big value in owning minerals, is that they're cash flow driven, growth oriented assets, and zero chance of loss of principal. I don't want to lose any money, and I believe that investing properly in mineral rights, you have virtually a very small percentage or chance you would ever lose money in owning mineral rights directly. High net worth investors putting in your self-directed IRA, well, I'll sum it up for you. It has exactly the same timeline as my IRA. I'm 55 years old. I need the next 14 years to accumulate wealth by cash coming from the investments I make in my self-directed IRA, and of course from the fact that the value of those potential minerals that I buy go up and up and up over time. So it's a very parallel timeline between self-directed IRA and the desire to use the capital in owning mineral rights. You also are looking at the fact that I don't want anything to diminish. I don't want cash calls. I don't want expenses paid out of my IRA. I only want money in and growth in cash flow. I don't ever want to have to reduce my account balance by having to pay costs. The rest of the items are fairly well self-explained, but one thing to keep in mind, most of these minerals that you'll be buying or looking at to invest in today's market will probably be operated by very successful billion-dollar oil companies, because that's who your tenants are. Now, how do you get involved? It's simple. As I wrap up, first you decide, do you want to be in the energy space? That's the first question. I mean, you may be very successful in bonds and real estate and other products that qualify for self-directed IRAs or even your traditional investment account. Most of our partners have had to make the decision. I truly believe owning energy directly somewhere in my portfolio at some level makes sense. So step one, do you want to be in the market? Step two, what kind of interest do you want to have? Do you want to put your toe in the water, your foot in the water, or do you want to make owning energy assets part of your main platform? Many of our partners like to have an energy presence across the board as one of their foundation blocks in their portfolio. And then step three, you got to decide who you're going to invest with. There's Publicly traded companies, you can buy their stock and they buy and sell minerals and you're buying their stock. So you're subject to a public market. You can go and find minerals in different LLCs and funds, and you can buy minerals directly yourself. So there's a lot of ways to do it. The number one thing I would think of is you'd have to have the expertise. So today, as I wrap up and turn it back over to Tyler, David Day is our business development manager. He coordinates all of our clients and our accounts. He works with our business development team in matching personalities with different investors that do, in fact, like to find out more about mineral rights. And from our standpoint, it's always really important that you know that we're here to help you, whether you invest with our company or not. We believe that it's important that you and all of the partners looking for information, like participating in this webinar today, are getting better and better information to make those critical decisions in preparing for retirement and building wealth to hand over your family. Before I turn it back to Ty, I just want to tell Brittany, thanks again. Brittany, I know is expecting a young baby here soon. I congratulate her on that. I'm so excited for her. Tyler just had a new baby 2 weeks ago. One of my staff just had a baby 2 weeks ago. I'm not drinking the water. I've got grandkids, but it's exciting times for everybody. And I'll turn it back over to Tyler. Maybe we can answer a few questions since we're running a little tight on time.
Perfect. Thank you, Troy. Really enjoyed that. So we're actually we have a few questions that we're gonna, Brittany's got to hop off here. We're gonna have a couple questions for Brittany, and then we're gonna go back to Troy for the remainder of the questions. So here's some contact information for both. Feel free to reach out. Again, like Troy mentioned, there's David Day's contact information, our business development manager, and Brittany's below that. So for one of the first questions that we had for Brittany, if you were to open an account and not immediately fund the investment, maybe you didn't know what you were investing, what are those fees and what do they look like?
Sure. So you're typically going to expect to pay a one-time setup fee. It's relatively small. It's $25 to get the account opened or process the application, I should say. If you're using DocuSign, which we have and we encourage people to do to keep everything electronic and simplify the process. And then your main fee is going to be the custodial fee. So I'm happy to share our fee schedule directly with anybody that would like it. It's also publicly available on our website, but we offer two options for the custodial fee, and you basically have the ability to choose which of the two is more cost effective. So you have the option to pay a flat rate per year for each asset or each investment held in your account, which would be $325 per year. So regardless of the value of the investment or how it fluctuates, you're just paying a flat $325 per year. The second option is going to be instead a value-based calculation. So we're going to look at the overall IRA's value, regardless of the number of investments you have, just how much it's worth and the latest valuation that we have. And depending on where that value falls, we have basically that option is laid out like a chart. So if your value falls between X and Y, your rate's going to be Z, and that's charged on a quarterly basis. So that may fluctuate, unlike the option one, which is going to be flat regardless. So what we can help you do is figure out, based on the funding that you're going to be starting with and the amount of investments you're going to do in the first year, which option is more cost effective. I would also say that we do need that fee, that administrative, that custodial fee, we do need it when you open your account. So it'll cover you for the first year. You have 7 days from the time you sign the application to change your mind and rescind the application if you want to reverse that. But we do need that up front, and then it'll basically cover any servicing that we need to do on the account. But as you asked, you can hold off on funding the account or choosing an investment for, it probably would be financially, reasonable to wait maybe several months. I wouldn't say, if you weren't going to do something for a year, I would say probably don't open the account now. But if you think it might be a few months, then I think it would be still worthwhile getting it open. And of course, at the time of the transaction, then we can talk about any fees that might apply for the transaction itself. But the fee schedule is definitely going to give you it's just one page, and visually it'll help you kind of wrap your head around what fees might apply or may not apply to you.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I know you have to be going, so we'll keep Troy here and shoot some questions over for him. But again, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you on today.
Thank you guys for having me. it's nice to be able to, even if it's just virtual, connect with people, see
people.
faces.
Keep us posted on the venue though, Brittany. Thank you for being
Yes.
Definitely will. Definitely will.
Yes,
Thank you so
please.
much. I really appreciate it. I'm here if you guys need me for the next at least couple of months.
here. Thanks. Sounds good.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. All right, Troy, so we have a couple questions here. The first would be, it looks like a fellow investor, the investment drilling projects in the past had bad experiences. What's the difference in owning mineral rights compared to drilling?
Well, I'll give you a quick answer. The answer is that when you're drilling, you are 100% exposed to the liability of the cost of drilling that well, and you're 100% responsible for any and all environmental and cost and fraud and all the exposure that comes with drilling a well. You're in that category. As a mineral owner, you have stepped above that and said, I am going to be involved in the same well, but I'm exposed to zero liability, zero cost overruns or environmental. So there is a reason to drill wells, which is there's a big tax deduction when you drill. And that's not a bad tool if that's what you're looking for. But I have found that over the last few years, most of the qualified clients that we invest with they're looking more for asset growth and cash flow. So what we do and the way we approach minerals is we say, rather than trying to speculate where the best wells are, let's go find where the best wells are and let's buy minerals underneath those wells. And so it's just a different strategy. It's a different risk component, but essentially the drilling side is something that I think that for myself personally, my company, and most of my existing partners, we pulled away from the risk. We'd much rather know we've got an incredibly low percentile of ever losing our money. We're more about taking a more conservative route, higher cash flow, and being at the top of the food chain. That's the main thing. Mineral owners are paid first. They're always paid every month, and they're paid no matter what the condition of the market is.
Much less risky then.
No, much less risky.
And now, as far as the mineral rights, I know you mentioned some in your presentation, how does Eckerd, is it a stock, is it a partnership, or do they actually own the mineral rights themselves?
Yeah, so you got a number of ways of buying mineral rights. You can, go into a truck stop in Oklahoma and in the bathroom there's a wall that says I have minerals for sale, or you can look on Craigslist or magazines, the Oklahoma Farm and Ranch. But realistically, the way our company approaches it, and of course every company is different, is that I start buying minerals from my own account. I go out and find what I think 35 years of experience and expertise tells me what are the very best minerals with the most competent oil companies in the right place where I get the highest extraction of value. And what I have done and what I continue to do is I go out, do all the due diligence, and I buy them under Eckerd Land and Acquisition's name. And then we actually have individual partners that join us. Now we'll keep the title in our name because we want to be the ones working with the oil companies. We're the experts, but then our partner will sign a purchase sale agreement. They'll say, hey, I want to participate. Troy owns 100 acres. I'd like to buy 10 of those 100 acres and be his partner. Eckerd will manage it. And effectively, it's actually a direct ownership. So it's not an LLC. It's not any type of an entity. You essentially have a pro rata share of the same 100 acres that we own. It's recorded and deeded in the courthouse. 6 months after you invest with our company, you say, I don't like the way Troy combs his hair, wears his cap. We would sign your minerals out, and now you deal directly with the oil company. So minerals can be bought in a number of fashions. There are several publicly traded companies that sell stock. You're just basically buying their stock, hoping that they can drive their stock price up, and you might get a distribution. In this case, it is a direct deeded titled asset that you own by virtue of the sale agreement with Eckerd. And I'm sure other companies have different ways that they do it, but it just depends on how you want to take possession.
Gotcha. Now, what's the requirements that you to invest with Eckerd?
In our case, we basically feel like that we should adhere to our best practices over the last 35 years. We found that we as a company only deal with accredited investors, which means their net worth is over $1 million, not counting their home and furnishings. And it's just simple. Anybody can write a check for minerals, but we're not into just selling you minerals. We're working on building a $250 million portfolio of minerals using a number of high net worth investors that want to be in the energy business and take advantage of what we believe is going to be a very healthy market over the next 10 years. So for us, the minimum criteria that we're looking for is you got to have at least an accreditation $1 million net worth or higher. And we're really looking for partners who want to take the next 3 or 4 or 5 years and put $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 to work over a series of portfolios of minerals. This is a serious investment. This isn't like throwing darts in the dart room. Oil and gas drilling has always been perceived as a high risk, put your money on the table, close your eyes, hope it wins. Minerals are like real estate. We're building a staggered or layered portfolio of valuable assets, creating cash flow and rates of return over long periods of time. It's a serious investment for serious investors.
Makes sense. Now, a couple futuristic questions. Where do you see the price of oil going during the next 6, 12, 18 months? I think that's probably on everybody's mind. So,
yeah, it's a subjective question, and everybody has their own opinion. All I can do is use 35 years and about 6 different crashes over that 35 years and the recovery after those crashes to figure out where we're headed. My personal belief is demand is going to languish quite substantially for 6 to 24 months. I don't think we'll get back to 100% of pre-COVID-19 levels for quite a while. But what I do see on the other side is a complete lobotomy of the oil and gas industry when it comes to exploration and replacing barrels of oil. So today we're just short of $35 a barrel. We need about $45 a barrel for all the U.S. basins to break even. But I got news for you. OPEC plus Russia, or OPEC plus, whatever they call themselves these days, the Nike Swish, hoodlums. What they effectively do is they need about $76 a barrel for their countries to survive. So it's my opinion that in 18 to 24 months, we'll be north of $55 a barrel. I really believe in 36 months, we'll be north of $85 a barrel, or even over $100 a barrel. We have a big decline in wells. We have a lot of production shut in. Globally, it's been complete decimation. When demand picks up, there's not going to be enough oil to meet that demand. It's going to drive prices up very sharp in 24 to 48 months. We're loading up like crazy on minerals, Tyler, right now, because we believe whoever owns cash flowing assets, producing wells, you're going to have one of the most rare assets in the country, a cash flowing producing well when demand picks up, because no one's going to be able to afford to drill new wells. And it's going to be a perfect storm for increased value and cash flow. And that's what we're working like crazy to build that portfolio right now.
I think you kind of answered this in your presentation, but if you own these minerals, why would you sell them to investors? I mean, of course, you have a business. That's how you make money. But what's your...
I'm kind of a sarcastic guy, but I'm going to answer the question the way I see it best. Why does Facebook sell their stock if they got such a great company? Why doesn't Uber Eats just have all their food delivered to their house? See, every business has a fundamental purpose or it goes out of business. My business is energy management. And what I've done for 35 years is I have put together investment opportunities in energy, and I've married the product and the due diligence and the packaging of that product with wealthy investors who don't know how to do it, but they want to be in that space. In my case, I'm buying minerals from sellers in the market who own a 1,000-acre ranch or 100-acre ranch. They don't know how they're going to make their house payment. They don't know how their crops are not doing good. They got a tractor, a John Deere tractor they bought last year. They need to make payments on. So they look around at their asset and they say, what do I sell? Well, I need to go sell 5 of my 100 acres and create some cash to pay off that tractor loan or put my mom in nursing home. When Eckerd buys it, we know we're like a 5-star French bakery. We make the best croissants that there ever is, but I can't eat them all. So I make those croissants to generate a value that the customer believes is the best of the best, and that's why they're willing to buy that 5-star croissant. In my case, I am retaining 5 to 20% of all the minerals that we buy as a company, but I offer my other remaining 80-85% of minerals out to qualified investors who believe in what we're doing, they believe in energy, and they want to be part of a very successful portfolio of minerals over the next 10 years. So we find that we fit a niche in the market, matching qualified money, top-notch investments, and we're the energy manager in between. So that's why we sell them. That's what we do for a living. And of course, that's exactly why we're on this webinar, is to figure out which investors may want to find self-directed IRAs is a great way to put money to work with a much higher rate of return.
And then on another subject, I guess maybe your investment advice. What typical stocks are you buying right now?
I'm buying
I
any
think
stock
everybody
that
wants to know.
well, I'm buying any stock that I think can make me 40% of my money. But what I personally, disclaimer, I own the stocks, I've been buying the
Yeah.
stocks, and I can't tell you when I'm going to sell them, but I'm just telling you what I've been doing. I'm looking for stocks that have a strategic advantage, and I primarily look at stocks in the energy space. I have bought stocks recently outside energy, but here's what I go for. I'm looking for stocks that I believe are undervalued as a result of their positioning, whether it be gas or oil or service companies. And right now I've been buying Continental Resources, CLR. I believe their stock has been hammered. I started buying it at $7, $8 a share. I think it's $14 a share today, or maybe 13. I think that's a $40 stock. Comstock Resources, I buy. My son's an engineer there. I don't get any insider trading or information. I bought that stock and I keep accumulating that stock because the owner is Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys owner. He is buying and developing natural gas, which is the closest natural gas for all the LNG facilities that will be exporting liquefied natural gas. And I believe that stock is trading at $5 a share. I think that's a $20 or $30 stock in the next couple of years. And then last but not least, I buy Ovintiv, which used to be the old Canadian company called Encana. It dropped as low as $4 and some change. I think it's at $8 today. That stock is undervalued by $20 or $30 a share. So I look at the area of expertise that I have. I look at the industry that I know, and I'm figuring out who's been hammered or battered down as a result of an entire industry collapse. And I'm saying who's going to be the survivors in best position to take advantage of this collapse, and I'm buying those stocks. So that's the three that I'm currently holding that I like. I'm trying to accumulate more. And I think any stock I buy has got to have a 40% rise in value. I'm not interested. I'd rather buy minerals.
Makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think that does it for today. Just want to thank you for coming on. It was great presentation. I think anybody that has any follow-up questions can definitely follow up with David. Brittany, if you have any self-direct IRA questions, I don't know if you want to maybe close it out, Troy.
I just want to leave everybody with one final comment, Tyler, and I just wanted to think about this. The one thing that's the advantage of oil and gas minerals is that we're the largest consumer of oil and gas product in the world. We are the biggest users and consumers of oil and gas. We don't even produce barely over 50% of what we consume. If you talked about any other industry, whether it be the lumber industry or cattle industry or IT industry, and you said, we only make 50% of what we consume, any logical conclusion is, I better own that because there's a guarantee of demand and there's a shortage of supply. It's better than the fundamentals of Economics 101. It's a proof of concept of Economics 101. Every investor who's qualified, whether it be in your self-directed IRA or whether it be your ordinary portfolio, find a way to get out and buy and own minerals, whether it be my company or somebody else, because why? We're never going to go down in demand in this country. I don't care how many people sit at home watching Netflix. Everything in your office, every carpet you stand on, the phone you're on, the computer you're on, everything you have is made of petroleum products. So I just want you to think hard and fast. Where do you go in the next 5 to 10 years with this global chaos? Me, I'm all about toilet paper and minerals. That's the two things I know we're going to sell for sure. Apparently, that's what's proven in the last 60 days. Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. I really appreciate it. You can always follow up with David Day. We look forward to giving you more and more information about what you can do with your portfolio. Tyler, thanks for your time again.
Hey, no problem, Troy. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you, guys.